The gala was a grand affair, filled with flashing cameras, elegant gowns, and conversations that hummed like background noise. It was the kind of event where appearances mattered more than sincerity, and for Barron Trump, it was just another night of playing a role he never asked for. Standing near the towering glass windows, he gazed out at the sprawling New York skyline. His father, Donald Trump, was at the center of the room, shaking hands and exchanging laughs. People surrounded him, eager to be in his presence. Barron had always known how these nights went. He was expected to be there, to be seen but not heard, to exist without disrupting the perfect image. The cameras had already found him. Flashes burst through the air, capturing his expression like a puzzle for the world to solve. And as always, they would say the same thing. Why does Barron Trump always look so sad? Tonight, however, someone finally asked him the question directly. Barron? He turned slightly. A young woman stood nearby, her presence quiet yet intentional. Grace. He had seen her before, a journalist known for her ability to listen rather than just pry. "I hope you don't mind me asking," she said hesitantly, "but people always wonder, why do you look so sad?" Barron let out a slow breath. He could have ignored her, like he had ignored the question for years. But tonight, something inside him stirred. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the weight of everything he had never said. So he spoke. "It's not sadness," he said, his voice steady yet heavy. "It's exhaustion." Grace didn't interrupt. She just let him talk. "You have no idea what it's like," he continued, his eyes fixed on the skyline. "Every single day, from the moment I wake up, I know that no matter what I do, people will judge me. I know that my face, this face, will be picked apart by millions of people who have never even met me. They'll look at a single photograph and act like they know my entire life." He turned to face her, his expression unreadable yet brimming with something raw. "When I was younger, I didn't understand it. I thought if I just acted normal, people would see me, understand me. But then I realized they weren't looking at me. They were looking at an idea of me, something they had created in their minds, and no matter what I did, I couldn't change it." Grace remained silent, but her eyes told him to continue. "If I smile, they say it's fake. If I frown, they say I'm miserable. If I do nothing, they create an entire story about how much I must be suffering." He let out a dry laugh, shaking his head. "Do you know what that does to a person? To know that nothing you do will ever be yours, that every gesture, every expression, every silence, everything belongs to strangers who don't care about the truth." His voice grew quieter now, yet the intensity in his words deepened. "It's worse when I'm with my father, because then I'm not even me anymore. I'm just his son. People don't see Barron, they see Trump, and they make their own assumptions. If I stand beside him, I must be just like him. If I don't, I must hate him. If I don't speak, I must be hiding something. It's never just me." He exhaled, his fingers curling slightly at his sides. "I didn't choose this life, Grace. I didn't ask to be born into a name that turns heads before I even open my mouth. But I don't get to be normal. I don't get to be anything without the world deciding what it means first." His voice dropped even lower, filled with something that sounded dangerously close to vulnerability. "Do you know what it feels like to never be allowed to have a bad day? To never be able to trip, to stutter, to frown without it becoming news? I could wake up with a headache and the world would say, 'Look at how broken he is.' I could just be thinking and they'd say, 'Look how unhappy he looks with his father.' I could be completely fine and they'd still turn it into something it's not." His jaw tightened, and for the first time Grace saw it. Not just the weariness, but the loneliness. "The worst part?" he whispered. "The world doesn't want the truth. They want a story, and I don't get to decide what that story is." Grace swallowed, her throat tight. She had spent years asking questions, chasing headlines, uncovering narratives, but for the first time she felt guilty. "Do you ever wish things were different?" she asked softly. Barron let out a small, bitter chuckle. "Every single day." The weight of his words settled between them, a truth so simple yet so impossibly heavy. And tomorrow, when the pictures from tonight appeared online, people would talk. They would analyse his posture, his expression, his presence, and once again the world would tell a story that wasn't his to control. Maybe one day the world will stop looking at Barron Trump as an enigma and start seeing him as a person. In the end, Barron Trump's story is a powerful reminder of the dangers of quick judgment, especially when it comes to public figures who seem to have everything. The truth is, none of us can truly understand what it's like to live in Barron's shoes, to carry the weight of public expectation every day. And maybe that's something we should remember before we pass judgment on anyone, especially those who live under the constant gaze of the world. We often look at them through a lens of assumption, believing we know their lives because we see a moment frozen in time, a photograph, a video, a headline, but we fail to understand the weight they carry. No one can truly know the pressures, the silent battles, or the loneliness that comes with living under constant scrutiny. When you're constantly watched, every move you make is dissected, and no matter how you feel inside, the world expects you to fit a certain image. It's easy to forget that those in the spotlight are still human, still struggling with their own challenges. For Barron and many others like him, it can feel like living in a cave beneath the spotlight, constantly overshadowed by the attention and expectations of the world. The constant gaze can be suffocating, making it feel as though there's no escape, no room to breathe, no space to simply be. This story calls us to pause and reflect before passing judgment on others. It reminds us that while their lives may seem perfect or easy from the outside, the truth is often far more complex. Instead of making assumptions about someone's happiness or struggles, we should approach them with empathy and understanding. Because sometimes the greatest burden someone carries isn't their success, it's the weight of everyone else's eyes on them. So what do you think? Should we continue to judge people based on a moment frozen in time, or should we take a step back and consider the complexity of their reality? And more importantly, how much of our perception of others is shaped by the stories we tell ourselves rather than the truth? If you enjoyed the story and found it meaningful, don't forget to leave a like. It really helps us reach more people. We'd also love to hear from you. Share your thoughts and the lessons you've learned in the comments below. Your insights could inspire someone else.